Hey everyone, Stu put up a post on the Facebook group the other day about the, I think it was IGN's top 25 Transformers, and people obviously start coming with their own lists, and so I thought I'd do mine. You'll have to excuse my voice, I've been ill for about the last day and a half, so I probably sound a bit rough, but I'm going to get this done. So yeah, let's crack on with this. So at 25, I'm going for Ratchet. Ratchet is pretty much the same in any continuity he crops up in, pretty much. He's always the crotchety, medic. Yeah, and he was a bit of a sleeper hit for me in Prime. I wasn't overly keen on him at first, but he kind of grew on me as the season went on. And yeah, he's featured quite heavily in a lot of the original Marvel comic run. And yeah, pretty cool character. Next up is Thrust. This is a small version I have of him. I also have the full-size version of him. Now, while Thrust hasn't really had a lot of sort of character development in comics or cartoons or anything, he holds a bit of sentimental value. He was kind of the only G1 Decepticon I had when I was little because I always bought Autobots. Next up is something I don't have a toy for because it hasn't been released yet and it's coming out towards the end of this year, so I'm looking forward to that, but it's Chromia. And Chromia is featuring at the minute as one of the main cast of the Windblade comic book, and I'm really enjoying the writing on that. It's, well, I'll come to more of that later. Next up is Chrome Dome. Although this is the original Headmaster version, the version I'm really referring to here is the more than meets the IIDW version of him, which I think is a fantastically written character. You see him go through a lot of range of emotions, especially after what happens to Rewind, and he's kind of been phased out a little bit at the minute, but I'm hoping he makes more of an appearance again later on down the line. And I'm really looking forward to getting his new toy as part of the Collectors Club series this year. At 21, I'm going with Warpath. Again, this is someone who's not really had a lot of exposure but holds sentimental value to me because this was the very first Transformer I ever owned. Not this particular one, this is a reissue one. I do have my original one somewhere, but I've not found him yet, unfortunately. But yeah, so this is the one that started it all. Then we've got Swerve, who is never really featured in anything until More Than Meets the Eye, where he's kind of like I wouldn't say like a focal character, but he sort of facilitates the interaction of many characters with his bar, where lots of people can come together, and he's got quite a lot of humour written into the character, and yeah, just really nicely done. Up next is Gears, who bizarrely in the original series of figures shared the mould with Swerve. Again, this is one I had as a child. Again, not the original one I'm holding here, but Gears is a right miserable bastard, and the star of one of my favourite G1 episodes, Changing Gears. Next is Skids. Skids kind of went from a sort of a daydreaming background, not really doing a lot, bit generic character in the original Marvel run. The only thing I really remember that is like him enjoying getting his hubcaps polished by some human girl, so that's a bit weird. But in IDW, he's this sort of kick-ass, tooled up, absolute machine, but he's just a theoretician. Then we have Airraiser, who was basically my favourite character from the Beast Wars series. Doesn't conform to the sort of stereotypical girly girl look, bit of a tomboy, and it was nice to have a flying Maximal other than Optimus Prime. So yeah, I wouldn't mind if they did an update of her that was a bit more sort of screen accurate. Next up is Nightbeat. I don't own a Nightbeat currently, but I'm planning on picking up the Generations one when it come out. And he was a character that was really well written in particular the Marvel run of comics. Who else could pull off a trench coat? the obligatory Bumblebee. G1 version, not any of the like the movie versions that have come since that just ruined the character for me completely, but G1 Bumblebee, very cool. Then it's Punch Counter Punch. This guy really only cropped up in about 2 minutes worth of footage in the Rebirth, season 4 of the G1 cartoon. But there was quite a few characters in that were, although you only saw them briefly, they were like, oh, they're quite cool. One of only, a handful of figures that is both Autobot and Decepticon. You see here, he may be a Decepticon, but his counterpart is always nearby, real nearby. So next is Cosmos, and I really only need to say one thing about Cosmos: I believe. Next is Cliffjumper, who is my favourite of the mini-bots from the original series. He's appeared in a few other things as well, most recently Prime. Generally written the same way, always a bit reckless, bit hot-headed. Voiced by the sadly recently passed Casey Kasem. It was unfortunate, really. He didn't really feature much after the movie. I think the voice actor had a bit of a falling out with those writing the show. But yeah, I always enjoyed Cliffjumper. Then we have RC, this being the Prime incarnation of her. She's cropped up in most versions of Transformers, usually playing the sort of token female role. But Prime especially I enjoyed, she was a bit kick-ass in that. And looking forward to the new Generations toy of her when it comes out later in the year. Ultra Magnus, maybe he can deal with just about making my top 10. I really enjoyed him in Transformers Prime. He was sort of, well, he's generally written as the kind of by the book, follow the rules at all costs kind of character. I wasn't such a fan of him in the G1 cartoon, but he was really well written. I thought in the Marvel comic run, especially his sort of ongoing rivalry with Galvatron, especially when he kind of took him on a couple of times knowing that he was basically going to get his ass kicked, and yet knew that he still had to do it anyway. Rack and Ruin, one of my favourite comic book only characters. I wish someone would do a toy. You can't have a top 25 list without Grimlock. It just wouldn't work. Next up is Road Caesar from Transformers Victory, which is a series I absolutely love. So the Brain Masters in that were some of my favourite characters, and the combined form just looks, well, I think it looks great. Yeah, great toys, great characters. Enough said. Narrowly missing out on the top 5 is Steeljaw, one of my favourite cassettes. You should know that he appears at the start of all my videos. But yeah, I love this guy. I just wish he'd appeared in a bit more fiction, really. He doesn't really crop up in too much, but yeah, love this guy. Straight into the top 5 comes this lady, Windblade. I love this comic. I've only just started reading it, so maybe it's that kind of whole newness thing playing a bit of a part on this selection here, but this is a brilliant series. I'm absolutely loving this. The character development is really good. I mean, they've got to kind of accelerate it a bit because they've only got 4 issues to work with. I'm hoping we maybe get some more of that. There was talk of this becoming an ongoing if it's sold well enough. I don't know how true that is, but even if it isn't, I hope she comes back in some form or another. Definitely buying the toy when it's released as soon as I get my hands on it. Hopefully at AA this year. You've got to have at least one nut job in there somewhere, and they don't come more of a nut job than Whirl. He's he's always been a bit of a quirky character. The toy was odd. I mean, he has no hands, he has one eye, no mouth, and the fact he's a complete mentalist in IDW, he's just one of the best written characters in that series. Love Whirl. In at number 3 is Ratchet, my favourite cassette. One of the few Decepticons on this list. Ratchet's always been a favourite of mine. I like the way he's only a little bat, but he's sort of in more than one series he's kind of managed to work his way up to sort of leader position in the Decepticons. I really enjoyed his Marvel run when he took over with the Car Wash of Doom. It's a really cheesy storyline, but there was just something quite endearing about the whole thing. So yeah, Ratchet, love him. Narrowly missing out on top spot, and I really do mean narrowly. It took me a long time to kind of decide who's going to be number one, who's going to be number two. But Iron Fist from Last Stand of the Wreckers. And in fact, it's probably the fact he's only in Last Stand of the Wreckers that stops him claiming number one spot. There was a flashback scene in More Than Meets the Eye where he turned up for a moment, but if he'd been in more fiction, I think he could have well taken number one spot. Any toy that makes me buy it 3 times in one day has got to be reasonably good. And of course, we got the Collectors Club version as well now, and the third-party version from Mech Ideas soon to be released as well. So, exciting times. And number one, you know, if you know me, you know there could only be one choice if it wasn't Iron Fist. It's going to be Wheeljack. The first Transformer you ever see in the animated series. Maybe that has something to do with it. But he's kind of like the nutty professor, always coming up with wacky inventions. Most of the time they don't work. Probably the coolest looking bot for me they've ever done, especially the head. Just love the light up ears. Gutted the Masterpiece isn't going to be available until after AA, because I was planning to make that my sort of number one purchase, but so I'm going to have to wait till sort of the end of the month, I think, for that. I think it's due August 23rd, they're quoting around online at the minute. But yeah, that's my number one. So that was my top 25 Transformers. Obviously some notable omissions from that list. No Optimus Prime, no Megatrons. I don't go for the main characters, I really don't. Don't know why. I just prefer the ones who are sort of fringe players who you see they sort of star in an episode or two or a section of a comic book and then you see them for a while again. I don't know why that is. But yeah, that's my top 25. I'm sorry if I sound horrendous. Still ill, and I really enjoyed putting this list together. If nothing else, it gave me an excuse to sort of pick stuff up off the shelves, have a little bit of a play with a few things I haven't picked up in a while. So that was all good fun. So let me know what you think of my list. Obviously, no one's going to agree completely with it. And yeah, I've enjoyed watching or seeing the other lists that people have made. It's all good. So yeah, that's all for now. So thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later.